This conference will now be recorded.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Satellite Book Club Seminar Series. This is session number 27 with John Evans and Lee Byerle today. Going to be talking about new satellite products and menu items for AWIPS and the TOWR-S RPM version 20. So hopefully you're tuning in today to learn more about what's coming up in the next TOWR-S RPM. Our facilitator today is going to be Frank Alsheimer, Science and Operations Officer, Columbia, South Carolina. Just a reminder before we get started that the session is being recorded, and we'll have opportunity for question and answer time after the presentation. So please post your questions in the chat room and we'll field them through there after the presentation. We're always looking for future presenters, so if you're interested in doing so, please get in touch with us. And if you're looking for training materials, whether they're not created or you just don't know where to find them, Brian Modden, the Office of the Chief Learning Officer, can point you in the right direction. Just like to thank our TOWR-S team, not only John Evans and Lee Byerle for joining us today, but also Kashad Bauman and David Blutis for supporting the Satellite Book Club, and also the Office of the Chief Learning Officer and the GOES-R and JPSS programs. Without further ado, I would like to introduce John and Lee. John Evans recently joined the TOWR-S team in support of the Office of Observations to streamline forecaster access to satellite data products. He previously worked with JPSS and has led numerous products with NASA, NOAA, and others, emphasizing open, scalable, and interoperable data systems. And Lee Byerle joined the TOWR-S team in 2015 to support the GOES-R program and Office of Observations to transition new satellite capabilities to operations. He also supports the AWIPS program in the National Centers AWIPS Transition Project. Prior to TOWR-S, he served in the U.S. Air Force as a weather officer for 20 years. John and Lee, welcome back to the Satellite Book Club.
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, so the TOWR-S team has been hard at work these last couple of months preparing a fresh new bundle of AWIPS configurations known as the TOWR-S RPM version 20, and it's just about ready for release, just in time for the holiday season. So let's kind of look through that and present to you what's in that RPM, what you can expect, and we'll have a discussion about it. We'll start with a very brief outline of what is a TOWR-S RPM, what it does and doesn't do, although I think given the amount of uptake of the previous RPM back in, I guess we presented it in late August, between late August and early October, I think over 117 sites installed it, and that was really exciting. So it would appear a lot of people have become quite familiar with first-hand experience with these RPMs, and that probably includes many of you. So I'll briefly touch on that, and then we'll talk about this particular RPM version 20, what's in it, what it supports, and how to install it and where to go next. So what is a TOWR-S RPM? It is intended to make AWIPS a bit more agile and streamline deployment new capabilities outside of the baseline releases. It is coordinated with the baseline activity for AWIPS development as well. The content is based on inputs from quite a wide-ranging community, and not just internal to the TOWR-S team. In fact, we'll see some examples of that today. And in particular, a number of different people and sites participate in the live testing of the RPM as it gets ready for release, and that has been happening this week. These people from these various sites listed here on slide 3 have provided very valuable feedback as they've tested it out, and noticed a few glitches in the package and in the documentation and so on. So we've been able to firm that up and make it more widely usable by a larger group. These updates are also benefit from the input from regional focal points, APO, NCF, and OPPSD staff. As many of you know, an RPM contains a number of configuration files that change how AWIPS behaves, change the site level configurations. These override the baseline, but don't actually change the baseline AWIPS configurations or code. Probably the most important point on slide 4 is that these updates are cumulative. And so version 20 includes all the content from version 19. And so if you missed an RPM, don't worry about it. Just install the latest RPM and you should be good. And again, this should be familiar to many of you. Now for the specifics of RPM version 20, slide 5 shows quite a long list of new products supported, new capabilities, new menu configurations, and so on. And we'll go through this visually in the next several slides. And it's worth noting here that the RPM was originally intended to roll out to people this week. There's been a few delays, partly related to critical weather days in the last couple of weeks that have resulted in a little bit of a schedule slip, but we expect to make the RPM available as well as the LDM data feeds that it supports, the new data products over these feeds available on next week, early next week, November 23rd. So a number of these, I won't go through each of these points in detail. We'll go through them visually in a moment. But a number of them relate to geostationary GOES data products and capabilities. And then roughly the second half of this list deals with polar orbiting satellite data. And so starting with the menu configurations, Lee, you want to fill us in?
Yeah, thanks, John. So yeah, we'll go over some of the efforts here to revamp the satellite menu. So this is one of the big updates with the new RPM configurations this month. And many thanks to Frank Alsheimer and for all of the inputs around the Weather Service on starting to get a handle on our satellite menu and get some of the things cleaned up and rearranged. So many thanks there, work in progress. And Steve Siegler from Missoula has also played a big role in the bundles and menu updates that we see here. So here's a screenshot of the satellite menu, just showing the rearranged items. I numbered them just to kind of draw our eyes on a couple things. But number 1 there is the goes east and west button. It still has the peel off to the right, but we've rearranged the precedence so that you go to what sector that you want to go check out. Before, if you look to the right where it says East Conus, the imagery channels and the drive products and so forth used to be up front and center. So we just switched those around this go around so that you go straight into the sector, and then for the type of product can be pulled up from there. Item 2, there are a number of imagery combinations that are added now, and so we call these imagery combos. These basically place the CONUS window and the West CONUS, the East CONUS and the West CONUS menu together, are imagery sectors together, that is. And so for West CONUS, we often just refer to that as PACUS. So these are PACUS CONUS combos, and so they're up front in the menu. And then there's also a section for local menu items, and that's number 3 there. It has 3 or 4 examples of local menu products that are just there for an example. So if sites would like to add or update or already have, which we're sure many do, local items, this is a placeholder for that there. And so in the following slides, if we go to the next slide, there are some examples of the imagery combos. So about almost halfway down that last slide down the menu, there was a CONUS, 4-panel CONUS only button. And if you're in a CONUS map scale, yeah, you can see it there, right there, yeah. And you see the green times there, the time showing up. If you're in a CONUS map scale, then those will fill in with the time. If you're in a different map scale, then those green times won't show in that particular view. So here's just an example of the 4 panels, the IR and visible on the left. You have 2 water vapor bands on the right, the low-level water vapor, and the traditional 6.19 in the bottom right. And just repeating, you can see the goes east is overlaid on top of the goes west. In this particular case, we had loop heat pipe issues there. You can see a little bit of the goes west popping out there on the right panels. This is just the default for starters. We do have a procedure there linked at the bottom, and we'll send these slides around after the presentation to switch that precedence, because again, East CONUS is by default overlaid with the West CONUS in these combos. If we go to the next slide, there's just another example of that for just the clean window IR. So again, down near the top of the satellite menu button, this would be a clean window default view. And again, with a link there for switching that precedent to put goes west on top. So moving on, a couple other goes related updates. If we look in the next slide, here's another view of the menu, this time highlighting the full disk GLM. So one of the big updates here, coming off the LDM from the regions, is a full disk version of the GLM. So the menus here are shown where you peel off to goes west and east by sector. The green boxes there show the east full disk and the GLM products, or it could be west full disk. And you can see the set of products now that come with a full disk GLM. Big thing here is the similar look and feel of the flash extent density at 1 in 5 minutes. The total optical energy that'll be available to all sites, and the minimum flash area will be available. This is going to be replacing that average flash area that a large number of sites were receiving with the CONUS views. So the CONUS sectors are still there, and the idea here is to have about a month overlap of the full disk and the CONUS, and then shutting off the CONUS GLM eventually, and we're looking for mid to late December for that. Another option here under the satellite menu, that box that's down there, it's a blue box. It just shows the 5-minute GLM with the 1-minute update for the full disk. There's east and west shown there. A couple links there at the bottom. We have a quick guide. We're glad to get that from Scott Rudlowski's group, just sort of hot off the presses on the full disk GLM. These are full disk tiles, so you're going to be getting Lightning products wherever they're, products will come in the same way that imagery does, so that you'll get a tile of Lightning imagery whenever there's Lightning within that tile. There are also some previous recent presentations by the Satellite Book Club linked there from Steve Cobb and Joseph Patton last week, as well as recently by Jason Jordan, which talk about some of the applications of GLM. And so in the next slide, there's just an example of the full disk GLM, just to highlight the same look and feel. If a site was receiving the total optical energy, here's what it looks like from the full disk. And there's a sampling of the total optical energy along with the FED and the minimum flash area there beneath. And again, just highlighting the 1-month overlap that's planned between the full disk and the CONUS that's going across the LDM now. Okay, so moving along, a couple other GOES products, just highlighting what will appear. There's a SIMS turbulence probability product. We heard from Tony Wimmers on this product several months back. This will be part of this release, where a probability field based on the full disk GOES 17 and GOES 16 is available, and for this release we have them in at CONUS and PACUS scales, so they'll be available. This is just a quick view of how those will look, showing a probability of turbulence. Still in an evaluation mode, but getting it out there on the regional LDM. Okay, moving on. There are a couple of other evaluations that are going on with new products. There's a GOES ICE cryosphere set of products that's coming out. Those are really hot off the press. They're in beta maturity now, and they're expected to be at a provisional level in about a month. And so those are going to be available on the LDM as well. And here's an example of ice surface temperature over the Aleutian Islands, along with what the menu looks like. Just the very initial rendition of these products. We're working through the data flow and getting that turned on. So that'll be available through the LDM, initially for GOES 17, full disk, 3 hourly at a 3 hourly cadence. If we go to the next slide, there's an ice motion product as well. That's going to be part of this. These are just from a sample file showing ice motion vectors and how they will look initially for that set of products. Again, that's going to be for GOES 17 initially. This is a very first look example over the Southeast Pacific from September. So more to come as we get the data flowing there. Okay, and so one more item on the CONUS PACUS derived motion winds. So we've had some really great feedback about these derived motion winds from GOES, and one of the items was to sort of simplify the real estate and the legend and come up with a combination of displays. And so this is an updated version of the GOES winds that are flowing over the SBN. It just plots them together at the CONUS and the PACUS scales, a consolidated button for all the pressure levels, or all of the channels. Shown here are all the pressure levels for the winds. And so that's one of the other new features of this version. And I think now we move on to some polar updates that'll be part of this as well. So I'll pass it back on to John.
Yeah. So, right, speaking of wind vectors, here's a product that will soon be available and for which AWIPS is now configured. The SCATSAT winds over, I guess this is overlaid over a GOES 16 channel 13 imagery. So that is comparable to the ASCAT winds, and one of the fixes that's in here is reconciling the categories and the colors between those two different similar products from different sensors. Also, active fires from SNPP and NOAA 20. Those are available through the regional DM via an ISATS transformation to make them work well with the GOES, with the AWIPS DMW plugin. So that is available now. And another, I think this will prove valuable to a lot of users. A different way of looking at the gridded NUCAPS the NUCAPS data from SNPP and NOAA 20, a gridded view. This had been available, but there were a few glitches that made it difficult to use, or in some cases impossible to use. So that's been fixed, and so this view of these sounding data sets is now available. Will be available in the RPM. From the polar orbiting GCOM satellite, the AMSR-2 ocean and imagery products have been available via data delivery for some time, and now the RPM makes available the configurations to use them. These configurations were previously only available to a few test sites, and so now this is more widely available. And the data are available via data delivery. And also available through data delivery, the MIRS products from the NOAA 20 ATMS sounder. And this is a whole slew of parameters. You can see here the solid liquid water, skin temperature, rain rate, etc. So this is also a valuable data stream that is now more widely available. So that is back to this list to kind of remind you. I guess we illustrated most of these. There's a few things that we haven't mentioned here visually. I'm seeing here the JSON 3 wave height product recently changed formats, and so AWIPS needed to be reconfigured to handle that. And so there may be a few other things here that we haven't illustrated. Oh, and at the bottom there's some menu items for products that are no longer available. The GOES volcanic ash and the legacy multi-set imagery composites, which are soon to be turned off. So those that latter product has a replacement product that takes its place. So and then as we mentioned earlier, this version 20 includes everything that was in RPM v19. For example, the GOES East Fog and Low Stratus and several others. So these are the cumulative updates. So how to install this is the subject of the next few slides.
Thank you, John. Yep, we have just a couple slides left here, but I wanted to touch on the key messages here, and focusing in especially on the ITOs we're working with, and all the assistance and feedback we've gotten from ITOs across the Weather Service, including the SUs as well. This is just to touch on some links. The information to install and update the LDM and to update the AWIPS configurations is the same as it's been 3 months ago when we did version 19. And so those steps are the same. And basically the steps are to uninstall any previous version, install the new one. And then of course there's some LDM configuration updates that are big with this one for products that are desired at the site. And so that's really it. We have 17 sites that have the current version available and have been kicking the tires and taking a look at things already for us. And we appreciate that. And so we're looking to go field wide on the 23rd, Monday, and to get these data flows available. So that's all I have for that slide. I think we have maybe 1 or 2 left.
So this is post-installation after you've gone through these steps, making sure that it worked, that it took. And there are some instructions specifically on what to look for, and you can also use these slides as a guide, go through the slides and make sure that you're getting what is displayed here. Now, I should say, some of these products are arriving over LDM. Things aren't quite configured yet, but will be in a few days. We expect next Monday to be when the data products will be widely available, and the RPM will also be staged for everyone to install. As for data delivery, if there are certain products available through data delivery that you need access to and don't yet have your site configured for data delivery, reach out to us or for any other matter, and we'll point you in the right direction and work with you to make it work. The last thing mentioned here is, on the installation guide, you'll see some pointers there to some additional or some optional configurations. Those have not really changed and are not strictly necessary to make all of this work, but they're there in case you want to do some additional configurations. That's all available from the same installation page. I think that's it for further information. Here's how to reach me or Lee, and you can also find us in the TOWR-S room on NWS chat. And I think that is the last slide. So take any questions or comments you may have.
Okay. Thank you, Lee, and thank you, John. Frank, were you able to join us? Sounds like maybe Frank is having a couple issues today, but that's okay. Technically, we learn to adapt to these technical issues in this current environment. So anyway, thank you very much, John and Lee, for your presentation. Also, thank you for all of the work that you and your team have done to get us the latest version of the TOWR-S RPM. I do just want to go back and emphasize once again about the changes to the menus. I think that's perhaps the biggest change that's going to come, or at least the change that perhaps most forecasters, folks in the field, are going to notice. And I think it's coincidental that today is actually the 4th anniversary of the GOES 16 launch. So it's been an incredible progress to get to this point. But back on that slide where it shows the menus, I do just want to point out that If for some reason, unforeseeable circumstances, we do need to go back to a legacy satellite for operations, that we are retaining those menus and we must retain those capabilities within AWIPS. Certainly, we hope that GOES 16 continues to be nominal and we're able to continue to use it. But our backup satellite is still the previous generation, and if there were to be a longer-term anomaly, we want to make sure the field is aware that all of those menu items are still preserved in the legacy menu there, even though it does say GOES 15. So other than that, just checking for questions here. So Tim Barker said because next week is a holiday, there is technically a maintenance moratorium, so it's likely no sites will be able to install until the following week. Yep, definitely. We realize it may take a little longer for this one to roll out in addition because use or lose season is coming up. So we'll keep that in mind, and certainly sites should schedule this as their staffing allows and is practical to do so with critical weather days in mind. A couple more questions here. So LDM, Local Data Manager, is what that acronym stands for, if you're unfamiliar with that. And we got another question here from Lee Krantz. Lee, how you doing? Are CIs able to grab these configurations via the normal TOWR Pro method for a standalone server?
Thanks, Lee. Yes, this is Lee here, and that is just let us know. We'll get with you offline, and that is possible to do, and we can work with you to make sure you get that.
Okay. Couple more questions for you here. What can we do if the TOWR-S RPM isn't staged at our site?
Yes, again, just give us a chat, call, or email, and we'll make sure that it's made available. We work with the NCF, and they've been very responsive and helpful, supportive to us to get that out there. So please contact us if you don't see it.
And another question we have here is, I know I sometimes get this confused and I work with this every day. What's different about the full disk GLM and CONUS, and when CONUS GLM will go away?
Sure, I'll take that. So with the GLM becoming full disk, it should be the same look and feel, and that's one of the main messages. Obviously, it's covering the full disk of the satellite now in a tiled format, and instead of having the average flash area that was the case for CONUS, the new field is going to be the minimum flash area, and it'll be the same look and feel. And the advantage with the tiles again is that these are very, very, very relatively small data flows. In those tiles on the full disk scene where there isn't lightning, then your system's not going to receive a file. So other than that, the same sampling, same color maps, and of course the menu is under the full disk now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's great to make everybody aware of the GLM. That's a new capability at the GOES R series, and we're continuing to see value of that particular data. Another question here, a lot of people in the field, we got the menu redesign. We're probably going to get feedback on that. What's the best way to get suggestions from the field to the TOWR-S team for consideration in an RPM?
So we've worked with Frank very closely, and by the way, Frank can hear us. He's just there's some audio issues otherwise, but Frank has worked very closely with us and has asked to go ahead and funnel updates and feedback and questions to him, and he's going to be our primary person, and then we'll work with him to implement and to get those updates made.
Okay, yeah, and we're definitely thankful for our field representatives, people like Frank that have helped with this redesign of the menus, and also some of the beta sites that test this out and make the installation seamless for the rest of the field sites. Just so one thing in the chat here, looks like Darren Van Cleve asked, is GLM still at the same temporal resolution on the full disk as it is on CONUS? And Joe Zajic said the answer to that is yes. We'll just pause one more minute here for last minute questions. Just one other thing of clarity here. I know we've had a lot of RPM releases, and now that release number has kind of caught up with the AWIPS release. So people that are new to this might be a little confused about, is V20 have a relationship to AWIPS OB20? And just to clarify, those are not related. You can install V20 even if you're at a AWIPS OB19 release. Is that right?
That's right. There are some living release notes with OB 20.2 that talk about PQ Act updates for satellite data, and we just throw those in the instructions here. So if you happen to be updating to 20.2 at the time you're putting in the RPM, you can go, we point to those living release notes that say, oh, hey, there are a couple instances here from a version, a previous version where we asked you to update your pqact.conf.site, and we need to remove those because they're now in the baseline. So we throw that in the instructions. Those are also in the living release notes. And that is in particular for the global blended hydro products and the GOES West or iMotion winds. But absolutely, otherwise, the RPM is compatible with AWIPS through version 22 at the moment. So there will be no conflicts there.
And the instruction guide, the installation guide makes it pretty clear what the RPM name ought to be and what AWIPS releases it will be compatible with. I'm sharing the slide there. If you squint really hard, you might be able to read that. The idea here is, of course, to release several more RPMs in quick succession so we can overtake the AWIPS version numbers and reduce the confusion.
Okay. Well, I think we have answered the questions from the field. So once people start performing the installation, I think you will be available for them to answer those questions that come up. Okay. Well, we'll then turn the page. Now, next week is Thanksgiving, so we will not have a Satellite Book Club on Thanksgiving. Hope you're able to have a good, restful holiday despite some of the restrictions, and everybody is staying well. But on Thursday, December 3rd, again at 12 noon Eastern Time, Karen Eagle from the National Weather Service Denver Center Weather Service Unit will discuss turbulence detection using GOES imagery. So please make sure your colleagues at the CWSUs in particular are aware of that presentation. We'd love to have them join us. Also remind you, just like everybody these days, your feedback is important to us. So let us know what we can do with the Satellite Book Club. Not only for me, but our TOWR-S team are really want to make this the best use of your time. And then last but not least today, I just want to call attention to the Beginner's Guide to GOES-R Series data. This might be useful to SUs, or perhaps you're working on a specific project where you want specific imagery of satellite imagery from the GOES-R series. You're curious about how to acquire, analyze, or visualize that. There is now a guide out there. There's many different ways to find the data. Again, it's not streamlined into AWIPS or anything, but if you're putting a publication together or a presentation, you need a animation or something like that from a previous case, there are resources out there to do that, and I think Kushad Bauman has put that into the chat as well. So please be on the lookout, and feel free to contact Joe Fiore, joseph.fiore@noaa.gov, if you have any questions or topics that you'd like to see about receiving GOES-R data. So with that, that's all from me here at the Weather Service Office of Observations. Please stay well. Please get in touch with our TOWR-S team. Thank you to John, Lee, Kushad, David, Have a good Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you in December. Thank you.